The sound of the slap echoed across the cul-de-sac like a gunshot, sharp and merciless, cutting through the quiet suburban evening. My wife stumbled back against our truck, her hand pressed to her cheek, eyes wide with disbelief and fear. The enforcer, a thick-armed man in a cheap polo with HOA security stitched above the pocket, smirked as if he had just disciplined a child. Behind him, Karen, the HOA president with her bloated sense of power matching her bloated frame, folded her arms with smug satisfaction, her lips twisted into a smile that dripped with malice. "You think you can ignore our fines?" she sneered, her voice shrill enough to rattle glass. "You think you're above the rules? Not in my neighborhood." My blood boiled. I'd promised myself I was done with violence, that I'd left that part of me behind when I retired from the Navy SEALs. But in that moment, seeing my wife trembling, her dignity struck down in our own driveway, the beast inside me stirred. They didn't know who they were dealing with. They thought I was just another homeowner, another target for intimidation. They had no idea the years I'd spent fighting wars in deserts and jungles, the scars carved into my bones from missions I couldn't even speak about. They had no idea that my quiet smile and my calm silence were forged in fire. My wife, Emily, whispered, "Don't," her voice shaking, her eyes begging me not to escalate it. But Karen's voice cut through again, sharp and mocking. "Oh, what's he going to do? Call the cops? Go ahead. They'll back us up. This is our community, and we enforce the law here." She gestured to the enforcers, who stood like thugs on a street corner, puffing their chests, eager to prove themselves. One of them spat on the pavement, just inches from Emily's shoes. I stepped forward, slow and steady, the way I used to walk into combat zones where a single wrong move meant death. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," I said, my voice low, each word laced with steel. Karen laughed, that high-pitched, ugly laugh that made my skin crawl. "Oh, really? What are you going to do about it?" The truth was, I didn't need to do much. I had cameras, audio, every inch of my property under quiet surveillance. I'd installed them after weeks of Karen's petty harassment letters, fines, threats about my truck in the driveway, my American flag flying too high, even accusations about the sound of my dog barking. Tonight, though, they'd crossed the line from harassment to assault. And that changed everything. I raised my phone, hit a button, and within seconds the driveway floodlights snapped on, bathing the enforcers in harsh white light. Every camera angle came alive, red dots glowing like eyes, capturing every twitch of their fists, every word dripping from Karen's sneering mouth. The enforcers shifted uneasily, realizing too late that they weren't in control anymore. Karen, oblivious, barked orders, "Seize his phone. Get rid of that footage." But the damage was already done. My system uploaded everything to a cloud server, secured and untouchable. That's when the twist arrived unexpected, even to me. A voice from across the street shouted, "That's enough, Karen." We all turned to see Mr. Thompson, the old Vietnam vet who lived 2 houses down, stepping out with his cane, his voice trembling but firm. He'd seen it all, the enforcers hitting Emily, the smug cruelty in Karen's face. Behind him, porch lights flicked on one by one, neighbors gathering, phones recording, whispers turning into outrage. For years they'd lived under Karen's thumb, too afraid to speak up. Tonight, the silence shattered. The enforcers tried to reassert themselves, one stepping toward Thompson, but I was faster. Training took over. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, and had him on the ground in seconds, disarmed without a weapon, just the precision and force of muscle memory. Another lunged, but I sidestepped, sending him sprawling into the bushes. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Karen's eyes widened, her arrogance cracking into panic for the first time. You can't assault HOA security," she shrieked, her voice breaking. I stared her down, my chest heaving with controlled fury. That wasn't security. That was assault. And now, everyone knows. I pointed toward the neighbors, toward the cameras, toward the truth that could no longer be buried under HOA letters or fines. For the first time, Karen looked small not because of her size, but because the power she clung to so desperately had slipped from her hands. The sirens arrived minutes later, red and blue flashing across the tidy lawns. The police stepped out, their eyes scanning the crowd, the enforcers still groaning on the pavement, my wife holding her cheek, and Karen sputtering excuses. She tried to twist the story, painting herself as the victim, shrieking about HOA authority. But the officers weren't buying it, not with video evidence streaming from half the block, not with neighbors finally speaking up about years of intimidation. For once, Karen's words meant nothing. And as Emily gripped my arm, her voice steadier now, I knew this was only the beginning. Tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about breaking chains, about turning fear into courage. Karen had drawn the line in our driveway, but she'd forgotten something. Some battles aren't fought with guns or fists. They're fought with truth, unity, and the refusal to be silenced. The night had turned into a stage, every eye in the neighborhood locked on the showdown unraveling in my driveway. The police officers moved swiftly, separating Karen from her so-called enforcers. She tried to shield them with her bloated frame, blocking their path, shrieking about rights and authority, but her voice only drew louder jeers from the neighbors who'd gathered. For years, Karen had ruled with threats of fines, and bullying letters slipped into mailboxes. Tonight, those same neighbors filmed her with shaky hands and wide eyes, documenting the moment their tyrant finally slipped. One of the officers approached me, his expression cautious but respectful. "Sir, we need to hear your side of this." I gestured toward Emily, her cheeks swollen and red. She lifted her phone, replaying the video she had managed to record through tears. The officer's jaw clenched as the sound of the slap echoed once again, followed by Karen's mocking laugh. Across the crowd, gasps turned into angry murmurs, a low rumble of outrage that rattled Karen's fragile composure. Karen pointed a trembling finger at me. "He attacked my men. He assaulted them without provocation." Her words dripped with desperation now, not authority. The officer turned calmly toward her. "Ma'am, I saw 2 men on the ground because they attempted another assault. And this," he motioned to the video, "is clear evidence that they initiated violence first." Karen's face twisted, the smug mask she wore for years shattering into something grotesque, fear mixed with denial, the kind of look bullies get when cornered. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. From the back of the crowd, a figure pushed through. It was Maria, a single mother Karen had terrorized for months with threats about unapproved paint colors and illegal flower beds. Maria's teenage son, standing tall beside her, lifted his phone and played another video. The crowd fell silent as the recording revealed Karen giving direct orders to her enforcers during another incident, weeks earlier, where they had threatened to tow Maria's car in the middle of the night. The video captured Karen's exact words. "If they don't obey, make them obey. I don't care what it takes." The officers froze, their eyes narrowing as the damning evidence crackled from the phone speaker. Karen's knees seemed to buckle, her hands flapping in frantic denial. "That's out of context. That's not what I meant." But her excuses evaporated in the heat of the crowd's fury. Neighbors who once cowered now shouted back. "You destroyed my mailbox last year. You tried to evict my parents. You fined me for hanging Christmas lights." Every grievance spilled into the night, a flood of voices exposing her reign of petty tyranny. The officers no longer hesitated. The first pair of cuffs clicked shut around the wrists of the enforcer who had struck Emily. The second enforcer, still groaning in the bushes, was pulled up and shackled. Karen wailed, stumbling back as the police turned to her. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for inciting assault and obstruction." Her scream cut through the air, a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You can't arrest me. I am the HOA." The irony was bitter and beautiful all at once. For so long she thought her title made her untouchable, that her invented rules were law. But as the officers led her toward the patrol car, lights painting her face in harsh flashes, it became clear to everyone that Karen was never above the law. She had only been hiding behind the fear of others. Now stripped of that shield, she looked small, pitiful, her power dissolving with each step toward the flashing cruiser. Emily clutched my hand tighter, her voice breaking as she whispered, "It's over." I pulled her close, pressing my forehead against hers, feeling the weight of years of harassment finally lifting. But it wasn't just for us. This moment belonged to the entire neighborhood. People clapped, some even cheered, not for me, but for the justice that had finally arrived. Old Mr. Thompson raised his cane like a sword in victory, his weathered voice booming across the cul-de-sac. "No more tyranny. Not here, not ever again." The crowd erupted, their cheers washing away years of silence. Days later, the fallout was everywhere. News crews swarmed the neighborhood, hungry for the story of the HOA president arrested for orchestrating violence against her own residents. Footage from that night went viral. The sight of Karen shrieking as she was dragged away becoming a symbol of arrogance finally undone. Local officials launched an investigation into the HOA's finances, uncovering thousands of dollars of fraudulent charges Karen had funneled into her own pocket. The enforcers were charged with assault and intimidation, facing years in prison. Karen herself was slapped with multiple charges: incitement, fraud, and abuse of authority. But the true victory wasn't in the courts. It was in the way our community transformed. Neighbors who had once lived in fear now gathered freely, helping one another repaint porches, rebuild gardens, and mend fences, both literal and emotional. The HOA, stripped of Karen's stranglehold, voted in a new board, one led by people who valued fairness, transparency, and kindness. For the first time in years, children played in the cul-de-sac without parents watching nervously from the windows. Laughter replaced fear, and freedom replaced oppression. As for me, I never wanted recognition. I'd fought battles before, but this one mattered more because it was personal. Protecting Emily, protecting our home, and protecting our community had awakened something in me that I thought I had buried when I left the military. It wasn't about violence. It was about standing firm, about reminding people that even the loudest bully falls silent when confronted with truth and courage. On the day of the sentencing, Emily and I stood together in the back of the courtroom. Karen shuffled in, thinner now, her arrogance deflated into a bitter scowl. When the judge read her prison term, there was no cheer, no gloating, just a heavy silence, the kind that comes when justice finally balances the scales. Karen glanced back once, her eyes scanning the room, searching for sympathy she would never find. All she saw were the faces of those she had tormented, united not by fear, but by resilience. As we left, Emily squeezed my hand and whispered, "You gave us back our lives." But I shook my head. We gave it back to each other. She tried to break us apart, and instead, we found strength together. And that's what I want anyone who hears this story to understand. Bullies thrive in silence, in the cracks between us where fear festers. But when people stand up, when voices rise together, even the strongest tyrant collapses. We didn't just defeat Corinne, we reclaimed our community, our dignity, and our freedom. So I'll ask you, the one reading this, was I right to fight back, to expose Karen and her enforcers for what they really were? Or should I have stayed silent, trusted that someone else would act? Tell me what you think. Was justice served, or was it too much?